I want to welcome all of you to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and welcome you to this very special program. In a minute, actually not in a minute, in a few minutes after you hear from our special guest of honor today, when Jerry Shockey's going to come up, he's going to introduce all the schools that are participating today. But what I want to just do briefly is to first remind you of the purpose of this program, a program that we call the Heart of a Hall of Famer. And we're honored to have a Hall of Famer with us this morning, Steve Largent. I'll tell you about him in a minute. And he's going to talk about how he used his Heart of a Hall of Famer to achieve his goals in life. And he's also going to talk about how each of you can do the same thing, how you can use your own personal skills and characteristics to achieve your goals and dreams in life. As I mentioned, Jerry Shockey, who you're going to hear from in a moment, is our youth education coordinator for the Hall of Fame, and he put all this together along with Adam Shipley and Matt Wachner and a number of others who've been a part of making this happen, as well as all the people that you see in the white shirts. Those are volunteers who help us here at the Hall of Fame to make programs like this possible. So let's give all of them a round of applause. And now I want to tell you about our honored guest, Mr. Steve Largent. He was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma back in 1954, and from a young age he excelled both academically and athletically. And when you get a chance to ask him questions, I think he'll be happy to tell you about things he was involved in when he was your age. Steve attended the University of Tulsa, where he received a degree in biology. And he also was an all-Missouri Valley Conference football star. He had, for example, 103 receptions in his final 2 seasons there. Now, Steve is a smaller player by some of today's standards. At 5'11", 187 pounds, some would say that he was a wide receiver that might not make it to the National Football League because of his average size and not exceptional speed. But he combined with his physical talents a number of other talents that he's going to talk to you about, especially his talent of exceptional determination and, as I say, the heart of a Hall of Famer. In 1976, when the NFL was having its draft, Mr. Largent was drafted by the Houston Oilers. And he was the 4th player taken, or the 2nd player, I think, taken by the Oilers, but 117th overall. And after just 4 preseasons with the Oilers, he was released from that team. Another adversity that he had to deal with. And it would be interesting for you all to hear what he has to say about how he dealt with that adversity and turned it into something positive. He ended up going to the Seattle Seahawks. And that trade turned out to be the catch of the century for the Seahawks because Steve became an instant star. In his rookie year, he had 54 receptions, which was third best in the conference. Mr. Largent went on to become one of the NFL's most outstanding pass catchers during his 14-season career with the Seattle Seahawks from 1976 to 1989. And at the time that he retired in 1989, he had such an outstanding career that he still held 6 major records in the National Football League. He had the record for most receptions, 819. He had the record for most consecutive games with a reception, 177 games with a reception. He had the record for most yards on receptions, 13,089 yards. He had the record for most touchdowns on receptions, 100. He had the record for most seasons with 50 or more receptions, 10 seasons. And he had the most seasons with 1,000 yards or more on 8 receptions. So you can imagine how the Houston Oilers felt at that point, saying, we had that guy on our team and we let him get away. And he became one of the most prominent and proficient players in pro football. And Mr. Largent also was an all-pro choice in 1983 and 1985 and again in 1987. He was also named to the All-Conference 3 times, and he was selected to play in 7 Pro Bowls and in 10 season span between 78 and 87. So again, with all of these outstanding achievements, this was done by an individual who was a receiver with the Houston Oilers and at that time they thought that he was too slow and too small to make it in the National Football League. He obviously proved them wrong. Now, a little bit about what Mr. Largent has been involved in since he left professional football, and the fact that he's gone on to, some would say, even greater achievements off the field. From 1994 to 2001, Mr. Largent served our country as a member of the United States House of Representatives, representing the 1st District of Oklahoma. He was the vice chairman of the Energy and Air Quality Subcommittee. He also served on the Telecommunications Subcommittee, the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee, and the Environment and Hazardous Materials Subcommittee. So that's a pretty impressive record for anybody in the United States Senate. His 7-year voting record reflects consistent support for lower taxes, less regulation, and strong free markets. Now, after serving in our U.S. Congress, Mr. Largent managed his own advertising, marketing, and consulting firm, where he worked with numerous Fortune 500 companies around the country. And in addition to that, he served as the Midwest Chapter Executive Director for the Wheelchair Foundation, part of his effort to give back. In 2003, Mr. Largent became the president and CEO of CTIA, the Wireless Association. All of you have cell phones. You might ask Mr. Largent a little bit about that, because he's the chief executive officer of an association that deals with all the companies that make wireless devices, including cell phones. Mr. Largent was inducted to the World Sports Humanitarian Hall of Fame in 2006. Again, a testament to his giving back to his communities. Now, before I go on with the final piece of the introduction, I'd like to ask our film crew to show you a brief video of Mr. Largent's playing days, just to bring back how good he was as a member of the National Football League.
Steve Largent was drafted 117th overall by the Houston Oilers in 1976, and then traded to the Seattle Seahawks. He played 14 NFL seasons and retired as the league's career leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He was selected for 7 Pro Bowls and missed only 4 games with injuries in his first 13 seasons. The Seahawks created the Steve Largent Award, presented annually to the player who best exemplifies Largent's spirit, dedication, and integrity.
And now, lastly, I'd like to mention something about Mr. Largent that's particularly important to all of us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that is that in 1995, Steve Largent earned the highest honor that a professional football player can achieve when he was enshrined here in Canton, Ohio, into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a Pro Football Hall of Famer and former member of the United States Congress, His Honor, Mr. Steve Largent.
Thank you for that sitting ovation. It's great to be with you here this morning. I am going to follow the 5 B's of effective public speaking. For those of you that have never heard of the 5 B's of effective public speaking, you might want to write them down. They are: be brief, brother, be brief. So I'm going to be brief this morning, and then we'll take your questions. Actually, I learned that lesson in a really powerful way. I had just been elected to Congress in 1994. The first opportunity I had to speak to the constituents of the 1st Congressional District was at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon that was held downtown. Our Chamber of Commerce had about 300 men and women who were the leaders in the business community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I was born and was representing at that time. And so I had really worked hard on this speech, because it was the first speech out of the box, first time being a member of Congress and addressing my hometown folks, and so I really wanted to do a good job. So I really worked hard on my notes, and I had copious notes, and I was all prepared to deliver them. And so I went to the meeting, to the luncheon, and began giving my speech. And I was about halfway through it, and it was really, now on hindsight, it was kind of long and laborious and boring. But I didn't think that at the time. I thought I was doing a good job, and I was going through all my notes, and I was about halfway through my notes. And in the middle of the crowd of 300 people, a gentleman jumps to his feet and heads to the exit. And I was a little offended. I was a new member of Congress, and I had really worked hard on my speech, and here's a guy taking off in the middle of my speech. And so I just called him out. I said, "Sir, where are you going? I'm not even halfway through my notes yet." He said, "I'm sorry, Congressman, but I've got to get a haircut." And now I'm really offended. I said, "Well, couldn't you have gotten a haircut before you came?" And he said, "I didn't need a haircut before I came, Congressman." So I learned a really powerful lesson about how to keep your remarks brief, and I'll do that today. You know, in my experience as both a professional athlete, as a businessman, as a member of Congress, I've learned that no business, no Congress, no professional sports team can be successful without one really critical element. And you know what it is? It's leadership. No organization, no Congress can possibly be successful without having strong leadership. You go to our libraries today, you go to bookstores today, and you'll see shelves filled with books about leadership, how to be a strong leader. But why is it we see so few examples of strong leaderships in our culture today? Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to take just a few moments to talk about three critical components within leadership that I think really have to be stressed among young people today, because we desperately need your leadership today. In 1994, General Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the hero of the Desert Storm, retired his commission in the military and went on a speaking tour. And one of the places he came to speak was Tulsa, Oklahoma. So General Schwarzkopf came to Tulsa, and he was really well received and gave glowing remarks. And at the end of his speech, he called for questions. And one of the first questions General Schwarzkopf was asked from the crowd in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was, "General, what's the problem with the leadership in our country today?" And General Schwarzkopf said this. He said, "The leadership vacuum," that's how he termed it, "the leadership vacuum that we experience today is not due to a lack of competency, but to a lack of character." Let me repeat that. He said, the leadership vacuum we're experiencing today is not due to a lack of competency, but to a lack of character. And I couldn't agree with General Schwarzkopf anymore. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a Supreme Court justice in the 1920s, and he put it this way. He said, "The things that lie before us and the things that lie behind us are tiny matters compared to the things that lie within us." He was referring to a person's character, the things that lie within you. The course that you're going through today, that the Hall of Fame is promoting, is talking about character, things like trustworthiness and respect and responsibility and fairness and caring and citizenship. Those are all qualities, all facets, if you will, of the same diamond of character. That's why it's so important that we need more leaders of character today. J.C. Watts was a football player at the University of Oklahoma, was my colleague in the House of Representatives from Oklahoma. We were elected the same year. J.C. put it this way. He said, "Character is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching." Character is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. And ladies and gentlemen, we need leaders of character today more than ever. The second quality that I believe is essential to leadership is courage. We need leaders of great courage. Winston Churchill was a leader of great courage. Winston Churchill, the leader of England during World War II, was 5'8", 210 pounds. But he said, in England's darkest hour was when Churchill said, "We will never, 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 never give up." That's leadership, and that takes strong courage. Winston Churchill also said, "Victory is not final, defeat is not fatal, it's courage that counts." And Winston Churchill had it exactly right. You know, one of my favorite movies is the movie Braveheart, starring Mel Gibson playing the part of William Wallace. William Wallace was an actual figure in the country of Scotland, fought for Scotland's freedom from the tyranny of England. And William Wallace in the movie is confronting Robert the Bruce. How many of you have seen the movie Braveheart? A lot of you, I'm sure. He's confronting Robert the Bruce to take leadership of Scotland. And William Wallace turns to Robert the Bruce and he says, people don't follow titles. People follow courage. And that is true today. People follow courage. One of the greatest leaders in my mind was Dr. Martin Luther King. Talk about a guy with courage. But Dr. King once said, vanity asks the question, is it popular? Cowardice asks the question, is it expedient? But courage asks the question, is it right? That's why leaders need great courage. They need to know how to ask the right question, is it right? So leaders must be courageous. The third quality, I want to just do a little test with you here, a little demonstration. Let me have all of you raise your right hand just like this. Okay, then very slowly bring your finger and your thumb together and form a circle. Okay, you're doing good, you're doing good. Stick with me. Now very slowly bring this circle down and put it right here on your chin. Everybody got it right here? Okay, now what did I say? I said put the circle on your chin. I was a biology major, but this was a chin, this is a cheek. Let me explain something to you about this illustration. This is my third point. Leaders have to lead by personal example. Leaders is not just about telling people what to do, because I told you to put the circle on your chin, but I put it on my cheek, didn't I? If you want to be a leader, you need to know you need to lead by personal example. You can't just tell people what to do. You have to be able to be willing to do it yourself. Chin, cheek, very important point. There's a saying that goes like this: you cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot lead where you will not go. You cannot teach what you do not know, you cannot lead where you will not go. We need leaders who will lead by personal example. We need leaders of great courage, we need leaders of character today, now more than ever. That's my charge to all of you here today, is to be leaders. You know, you think of leaders of armies, leaders of nations, but we need leaders of schools, we need leaders of classrooms, we need leaders in homes today. And you can be those leaders if you have great courage, if you lead by example, if you have great character. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. And we're going to ask questions in just a moment. I just want to finish with one quote by one of my heroes from history. He was President of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, right about the turn of the last century, 1900, 1906, right in that time frame. Teddy Roosevelt was president. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the strong man stumbled or the doer of deeds could have done them better. No, the credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with sweat and dust and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, and who, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." That's what leadership is all about. So with that, we'll turn it over and take your questions. Thank you.
That was the second time Mr. Perry and I did that, and we still put it on our cheek. And how many of you out there actually counted, "Be brave, brother, be brave," to make sure that was actually 5 Bs?
Be brief.
Be brief, I'm sorry. Be brave too, right? So I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to echo some of Mr. Perry's sentiments. First of all, let me say thank you to Mr. Perry for doing this as our President and Executive Director. Very busy throughout the day and on a day-to-day basis and traveling quite a bit. So I want to say thank you. Let's give him a round of applause for opening the program up. And then we greatly appreciate he's involved in a lot of things, not only his business, but a lot of other community foundations and everything else. So let's give another round of applause to Mr. Largent for being here today. And I also have to echo some of his other sentiments too. It's without Mr. Shipley up front here, our volunteers, our AV staff, Jim and Ryan, you can see his head peeking out through one of the booths up there. This program would not be possible. So let's give them all a round of applause as well. But that leads us to the real stars of the show, and that's you guys. So thank you to the teachers and administrators and all the tech coordinators that have the video conferencing schools involved. I want to thank you for everything that you guys do. Let's another round of applause. And I promise just one more. Just one more. And I would like to recognize the schools that are in attendance here as well as those that are in attendance through video conferencing. So, as I announce your school, please feel free to show your school spirit. Be as loud as you want to, So, with that being said, those schools that are tuned in as a live audience here in our audience here, number one, a school that we are very familiar with here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame because you're always playing in our stadium next door here in a state championship. Big Red, Steubenville. And what about our friends at Madison High School? Thank you, Madison. And how about McDonald High School? It's pretty good today. Pretty good this time. Let's go to Vermilion High School. I think I jinxed by saying something just there. And then last but definitely not least, Lorraine High School. Okay, I want to thank all of you for being here. But not only do we have a live audience from across northeastern Ohio, but we also have students tuning in from all across the country through our video conferencing technology. And I'd like to have those students, go ahead and feel free to give a shout out from your school. We will ask all the schools to remind them to keep their mics muted throughout the program. But at this point, when I call upon your school, you can feel free to unmute your mic and show your school spirit as well. We have Ford Middle School just north of us, Bree, Ohio. Home of the Browns training camp. We have all the way in Covington, Louisiana, we have our friends at Lee Road Junior High. We have Alvarado High School in Alvarado, Texas. Okay, thank you, Alvarado. Now, I'll ask as a group, because there's so many of them, we have a number of schools turning in from Dallas ISD, the independent school district there in Dallas. So let me say your school names, and then all of you collectively can say it at the same time. We have Woodrow Wilson High School, Houston Elementary, Seagoville Elementary, Ray Elementary, Hexter Elementary, Garcia Middle School, and Marsalis Elementary. So feel free to unmute your mics and give a shout there, Dallas ISD. Thank you for tuning in. And then lastly, our friends out in California in Kings County with Kings County Office of Education. We'd like to say hello to Roosevelt Elementary in Hanford, California. MLK in Hanford, California as well. And then last but definitely not least, Liberty Middle School in Lemoore, California. Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank you guys for all tuning in. Again, I want to remind the schools to please make sure your mics are muted throughout the program so you're not a distraction to the other schools that are tuning in. Now, really, as Steve already shared with you, the real idea and the premise behind this program, that was when we started in May of last year, is to find out what it took to get in the Hall of Fame beyond just the athletic ability. We know that Mr. Largent and the other members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame are all great examples of athletic ability. But it was beyond that really got them into the Hall of Fame. It was their character. It was their 6 core pillars that you guys are all studying: the trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And one thing that can be said about most of our Hall of Famers is that if their God-given ability didn't lie in professional football, they would have exceeded in some other life endeavor. And here's an example of someone who did, beyond just the game of pro football, succeed at and football, succeeded in business, succeeded in politics. I mean, all across the board. So you have someone today for you guys to talk and share with you guys today, someone who's not only one of the greatest football players, but one of the great citizens of the United States. So it really is, I behoove you guys to, as you're asking your questions, to really ask those thought-provoking questions to find out what he went through in his life. Because I guarantee you he's faced some of the same barriers that you guys face on a day-to-day basis. I know he shared some wonderful stories this morning with some of the students about some of the early obstacles in his life, and I'm sure we'll probably get to those again as well today. So you guys have a great opportunity to find out what it takes to achieve greatness and success, and not only on the field, but off the field as well. So before we go to questions from the live audience here, I do have one that I'd like to interject here from some of our video conferencing schools, but I want to remind the live audience as well, we do have volunteers in the back that do have microphones. When you do receive, please hold your question until you get that microphone. When you do get that microphone, go ahead and stand up, say your name, your school, and then go ahead and ask the question, not only so we can hear it, but also so our video conferencing schools can hear the question as well. But to start the program off, I think we'll go to our friends in Alvarado High School in Alvarado, Texas. I think it's a great question to kind of set the tone of the program. And this goes from Kenny Adams, who is it must be a football team. It's Mark DL right next to him, so a defensive lineman. What are some examples of times that you have persevered through adversity?
There's been several times. I think I shared this earlier that when I was growing up, I was actually 6 years old, and my parents were divorced. And my mom remarried 3 years later. My stepfather was an alcoholic, and so there was a lot of adversity in my life early on, which created a lack of self-confidence. And it really was through sports that I tried to rebuild the self-confidence that I felt like I needed. And so that was probably the first and most difficult hurdle I had to get over, was just the lack of any fatherly example left to me. And so I was kind of lost, trying to find my way. And really, it was through sports that I tried to seek to establish who I was and what I was about. And that probably is not a great avenue to go down. But it was the only avenue I had as a young person. And it was very challenging. But fortunately for me, I had a number of friends that were very helpful in talking with me and giving me advice, and I was willing to take it. And I also had some coaches that really saw the situation I was in and were willing to help and be a father figure for me. And that was really critical for me.
And I think that's important to note, that proper support system, but not only having that support system in place, whoever it might be, because your teachers serve as a role of that, your coaches, but not being scared to lean on someone when you need. Because we all have times in our lives where we need someone. You heard the song "Lean on Me." We all have times that we need people to lean on. So that's an important note to make. Let's go ahead with the questions. Some questions here at the audience. If you guys want to go ahead and raise your hand, we have a gentleman over here. If we can get him a mic, there's one in the back and one all the way, a couple in the back as well.
I'm Cooper Legeza from Madison. My question is, after you lost the race for governor in Oklahoma, what made you decide to go into business rather than back into politics?
Well, I tried to go into politics and was rejected by 6,500 votes in the race for governor. So I figured that kind of was a book that was closing in my life, and I was looking for the next chapter to move on. And that's when I had the opportunity. I actually, from November till the following August, was working, and I was doing different speaking and promotional things like that. But then got the opportunity to be the CEO of the trade association that represents all the companies in the wireless phone business, and took that opportunity in August and started in September, and have been there ever since 2003. So it was really, as I look at my life from going from high school, where I was a good football player, but not even the best football player on my high school team, to getting a college scholarship. And I think that was really one of the things that, as I look back on my life now, that really marked a new chapter in my life was going to college, because I remember driving into Tulsa. I lived in Oklahoma City, drove to Tulsa, which is 90 miles away, and coming into the city for the first time and thinking, whatever it takes, I'm going to get my college degree. Because I knew the value of having that degree in my life. And I also had been challenged by a counselor at my high school who told me I had such poor grades in high school, and I did. I didn't study. I didn't take classrooms seriously in high school, and that was a real mistake. But that's what I did. And I had a counselor tell me my senior year, you'll never make it in college because you have such poor study skills. And I took her words to me as a challenge personally, that I was going to make it in college. I was not only going to make it, I was going to graduate with a degree. And so that was my goal going into college. It didn't have anything to do with football, because I didn't figure football was going to last beyond college. But it gave me the opportunity to go to college and get my education, and that's what I did. Yep.
We had another one in the back. We have a mic back there. Yes. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Rayshawn Smith from Lorraine High School, and I was wondering, how well did the support of your family help you become a better person?
How did my family help me? Well, let me talk about two different families. One was my personal family, my mom and my stepfather and brothers. And I would say my mom loved me very much, and I know that, and she passed away 2 years ago. But she really spent herself for her boys. I had two younger brothers at the time. My father and stepfather, not so much. My dad left when I was 6, and my stepfather was not a good example for me at all, and so didn't apply any leadership skills for me at all either. And so that was more something I had to overcome. But then my family moving forward, so my wife, who I married when I was 20 years old, had 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. They're all married now, moving on with their own lives. But they were great inspirations to me, and also underscored the entire time the importance of my leadership that I gave to my family. And so I think they taught me just through need the necessity for leadership in the home. And that's what I would tell you is so important. So I can talk about leadership principles to this group of students out here today, and you can think, well, that's for leaders, that's not for me. And I would tell you, you're wrong, that these leadership principles are for each one of you, because each of you will be leaders in some context. It may not be leader of the United States. You may not run for president and win, but you'll be a leader in your home. You can be a leader with your husband or your wife or your own children, and you will be a leader in that respect. And that's why these principles we're talking about today are so important for each and every one of you. So don't not pay attention. Don't think that we're talking about somebody besides you, because it is talking about you in the context that you're going to be living your life in.
And I think as we talk about leadership, an important part of leadership is accountability. And we have a question from Lee Road Junior High in Covington, Louisiana, and that is, how important do you feel accountability is on and off the field?
Well, on the field, it's obvious that if you're not fulfilling your piece of the play, you're hurt, you're not being accountable to your team, and you make your team weaker. And that's very obvious. But it's also true in the business community, it's true in politics, that if you're not pulling your weight, then you're slowing the team down. You're slowing your party down. You're slowing your people that you represent down. You're slowing your business opportunities down. So accountability is very important. Right now, you have accountability as students. You have accountability to yourself. You have accountability to your teachers. You have accountability to your other fellow students when you're working on projects together. And so this idea of accountability is really important no matter what age you are. And it's important for your whole life.
Great. Another one out here? I know we have a bunch of hands up. Okay. over here.
All right, Garrett Primer from Madison. What's the hardest you've been hit, and who was it?
I'm surprised it's not on the highlight video, but the hardest I ever was hit by was by a guy named Mike Harden, who played safety for the Denver Broncos at the time. He later went and played with the Raiders. And he was coming directly at me the same time I was running a post route, so I was running directly at him. And our quarterback sort of lofted the ball a little bit, which is not what you want to do when you're throwing a post route. And it sort of fluttered in the air, and the ball and Mike Harden came to me at exactly the same time, except Mike Harden came with me with a forearm to my face and knocked me out before I hit the ground. I'll never forget that one.
We have another one back here. Then we have some up here in the front.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Tony Richardson. I'm from Lorraine. Before I ask my question, the first question is, did you hang on to the bar or did you drop it?
No, I never. I touched it, and I lost track of it after that
Awesome.
point.
Yeah, I recall during your during the introduction that you held 6 major pass receiving records at the time of your retirement. And so obviously you played at a high pedigree, a high level every Sunday. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of being under the limelight, but at the same time having integrity and doing the right things off the field? I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I do too. And I would tell you that preparation is actually absolutely a key to performing well. And that's a key whether you're playing football or playing any sport or you're in life. It's important that you're prepared. You can't go into the classroom and be successful unless you prepare. You can't go on the football field without preparing too. You know, a lot of people look at athletes or people that are successful and they think, man, they're so lucky. But what they don't see is that athlete or the successful person and the work that they do before they get into the limelight. And that's something that's important for all of you to hear, is that, you know, you look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, but he wasn't born that way. He worked at it. And you don't see any videos or highlight reels of the work that he put in before he got on the basketball gym. But he did. And you look at any great athlete, no matter who it is. Jerry Rice, one of the greatest receiver, I think, of all time. Jerry Rice worked very, very hard. But you never saw pictures or movies of the work that Jerry Rice put in. Everybody wants to be Jerry Rice, but not everybody wants to do the work that Jerry Rice did to become the greatest receiver in NFL history. And that's true of any person that's successful. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of effort. You don't just luck in to being successful. Now, if you want to buy a lottery ticket, maybe you do. You can win the lottery ticket and not do anything other than just buy a ticket. But very few things in life are you successful at without putting a lot of effort into it.
We had another one up here. Some folks in the middle here had their hands up.
Hello, I'm Rayshawn Smith from Steubenville High School. First of all, I love football, and I want to ask you, do you miss it?
You know, I miss certain aspects of it. I don't miss training camp. I don't miss practice. I miss playing the games. But I love football too. I played it my whole life until I was 35 years old. And so I love the game. But there was a time when I knew it was over.
When?
Did we play the Patriots?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you win?
I think we won one and lost one
Okay.
in the 14 years that I played.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Now, I think one of the areas that, talked about is overcoming obstacles in life. And one of the schools from Berea, just north of us, asked, obviously, Steve made opening remarks about, size. Look at the NFL receivers nowadays, 6'1". There's some guys that are 220, 225, run a 4.4 40. You weren't, say, gifted with this typical size, prototype size. How did you overcome your physical size to become an NFL player? How did you overcome that?
Well, I think that, your size and speed aren't the total package for a wide receiver or any position, because there's a lot of guys that are 6'4", 220 that can't play receiver. So it takes more than just how big you are or how strong you are or how fast you are to be a great athlete at any particular sport, but in football in particular. So I think I had a lot of the what they call intangible qualities that make a good player. I was hyper competitive. I wanted to win, and so size wasn't a factor to me. I think size is only a limiting factor if it limits you in your own head, and I never allowed it to limit me in my own head. So I never viewed myself as being too small or too slow. I always thought I could be competitive whatever size I was or however big I was or however fast I was. And so I think that sometimes the intangible assets that a person brings to the field are more important than the physical aspects that a person brings. That's something that I've tried to teach my kids and something that I try to teach young people whenever I get a chance to speak.
Another one, there's someone up here, gentleman back there. Oh, you got a mic, go ahead.
Justin Grossman from Lorraine High. When you retired, what were your emotions from walking away something you put so much time and work and heart into? And are there any regrets?
And are there any what?
Regrets.
Oh, well, my only regret is that we never got to the Super Bowl. I would have loved to play in the Super Bowl. We got to the game right before the Super Bowl, and we lost to the Raiders, or we could have gone to the Super Bowl. So we had a couple of chances, but we never made it, and that was a regret that I have from my playing career. And what was your first question? About? Oh, yeah, I know what it is now, yes. Thank you. I can still remember the day that I retired like it was yesterday, because I announced before the season that this would be the last season I played, because the decision I had to make was, am I going to retire after 13 years, or am I going to try to play one more? And the decision was I was going to try to play one more year, and I did. Ironically, the last year that I played, the first game we played that season, we were playing the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. And in the first half, the quarterback threw a pass for me, and I dove for it and didn't quite reach it and hit the turf in Philadelphia's field. They were playing at Veterans Stadium at that time, where the Phillies also were playing baseball still in September because it was the first game. And I landed on what was second base. And they hadn't done a good job of making the field level for the football game. And so I landed on second base and broke my arm. So that was my last year, and I missed the first 6 games as a result of that, or the next 6 games as a result of that, and then played the last 7 or 8 games of the season. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I can remember coming off the field for the last time. There was a little bit of remorse or regret about quitting something that I loved so much, and a little bit of anticipation of what's next. And probably what helped seal it for me is we played the Redskins in Seattle the last game of the year. So my last football game was against the Washington Redskins. Joe Gibbs was the head coach of the Redskins at that time. And I don't know if this was good or bad, but it made me not feel bad about walking away from football. The Redskins beat us 30-0. And that was the last game of the year. We weren't going to the playoffs. And so it was easy to close that chapter of my life, and that was made easier by losing 30-0.
And another one, gentleman here, and then we'll go to this person next up here.
Mark Solis, Lorraine High School. As a coach, we would like our team to be full of perfect guys. Reality of that is not the case. As a former player and being with numerous teammates throughout your career, whether it be college or high school, or excuse me, college or professional level, you saw former teammates off the field probably not make the best decisions and the best choices with their lives.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example or something that you've done in the past where you saw a teammate and how you handled that situation and how that was affecting their play, and most importantly, affecting the team's performance?
Well, I can tell you, thank you for that question. And I think that I can, the most important thing that I could say about that, particularly for a teammate, is the normal reaction when you have a teammate that's gone the wrong direction is to not say anything, don't make a big deal out of it, forget about it. And I would tell you that's the wrong thing to do. I think that as a teammate, there should be some love that you show that guy to say, hey, look, you're going the wrong way. You need to turn around. I'm there for you. I'll help you. What can I do? And be some kind of a support structure for a guy that's making bad decisions. Be a friend to him. And that's critical. I'm saying that in the context of sports, but I would tell you that's true in life. That when you find a friend that's going the wrong direction, the tendency is to go the other direction from them. Just leave them, say, you're making the wrong decision. I don't want anything to do with you. And what they need is somebody that cares enough about them that's willing to confront them and say, hey, look, you can't do that. Let me help you. Let me be by your side. That's being a true friend. That's being a real teammate, is a person that's willing to wade in to this mucky stuff and say, hey, I'm willing to get in the mud with you and help you get out and go a different direction.
Gentleman up here.
Hi, Ben Jameson from McDonald. Me and the government class were wondering if you felt your time in Congress was a progressive and fulfilling one.
My time in Congress was unbelievable. I would tell you that if it was 1994 again today, I would run again because I love serving in Congress. Now, you might ask, do you have any intentions of going back to Congress? I'd say absolutely not. There's no way. But the time that I was in office, I learned so much about our country and about our founding documents and about our founding fathers that were so inspiring to me that it just gave me an unbelievable love for this country and for the way we operate. Now, it's often ugly, as it is right now in Washington, D.C., and it's not pretty. Often it's not pretty, but it works. And sometimes it doesn't even work real well, but it works better than any other government that's ever been implemented in any other country in the history of the world. And so, democracy is a great thing, and it really made a fan of me when I was in Congress. And I wouldn't trade those times for anything.
There's someone back here, I believe.
My name is Jesse from Lorraine High, and I want to know what position do you play?
Can you hold?
I can hardly hear you, Justin.
When you was on the team, what position you played for?
What team did I play for?
Yeah.
Seattle.
And what they put you in?
What?
What position did they put you in?
Position?
What position?
Oh, I was a receiver.
Now, I've got a question to share is when we talk about your NFL career, and this comes in from Lee Road Junior High in Covington, Louisiana. Through your NFL career, how was your character tested? On and off the field, I guess.
Well, your character is always tested. On the field, it's tested. Are you going to prepare? Are you going to study? Are you going to watch film? All these are things that you do that the camera's not on you, the newspaper reporter's not writing about how you're doing this, that, or the other. But your preparation really impacts the way you perform on the field. And that's true in life, too. How well you prepare is a real indicator of how you'll perform. You find people in your school that do well in class. The reason they do well is not because they're just gifted or just because they're smarter than you are. It's because they prepare themselves to be successful in the classroom. And that's not determined by how smart you are. That's determined by how hard you're willing to work. So the willingness to work hard is an attribute that goes beyond playing football or playing baseball or basketball. It applies to every area of your life. And if you're willing to work hard, you can be successful at whatever you attempt to do. And that's really an important message to hear this morning.
And I think, I mean, Mr. Largent's a perfect example of that. That's one of the things he was known for in his NFL career was his preparation, and his route running. And that route running came from repetition and practice, and he's probably carried the same thing into his other facets of his life, in politics and business, and being prepared in anything and whatever life throws at you.
Yeah.
So let's go to another one. The one up here. Oh, okay. Sorry, sir.
I'm Ryan Barker from McDonald High School. What's your best memory in the NFL?
Oh, boy. I think probably the best memory was, I came up and I was with an expansion team, the Seattle Seahawks. And the expansion teams today are a lot different than they were because you couldn't, there was no free agent market. So you had to grow your team through the draft or through picking up players that other teams let go. And so it was really difficult to become competitive. And so it took us a while to become, well, we were competitive, but we weren't that successful. And so one of the highlights of my career really was the first year we made the playoffs, and that was in 1983. So the franchise became official in 1976. 1983, we made it to our first playoffs. And that year we were a wild card team. And I think we played the Broncos, our arch rival in our division, in the wild card game, and we beat them in Seattle. And we went on to play the Miami Dolphins in the divisional championship game. So the Dolphins had the best record in the AFC, and we were the wild card team. And we actually went to Miami. This was Dan Marino's rookie year, and he had receivers Mark Clayton and Mark Duper throwing touchdowns all over the place. And we actually upset the Dolphins in Miami that year in 1983. So that put us in the AFC Championship game against our other arch rival, which was the Oakland Raiders. And we lost that game, and that's when the Raiders went on to beat the Redskins in the Super Bowl with Marcus Allen and those guys. So that was probably the most memorable year for me.
What's another one? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm John Macri from Steubenville Big Red. You've obviously done a lot of great things in your life, but I want to know what you're most proud of.
What I'm what?
Most proud of.
Oh, well, I can tell you that. That's easy. I'm most proud of my family. My wife, who I married 35 years ago. My 4 children. I've got 3 boys and a girl. They're 31, 29, 27, and 25. And they're all married. I've got 4 grandchildren and 5th on the way. So that would be the thing I'm most proud of. Thank you.
My name's Chris Narboss. I'm also from Steubenville Big Red. And I would like to know, what is your most memorable football game of like where you had the most yards and like 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns? Like what can you remember the most?
Now you do realize you have some Cleveland folks right behind you wearing that jersey, right? Watch your back, right?
Well, I can tell you the game that I had the best statistics in. It's not necessarily the game I'm the most proud of, but I actually played in the first game after the strike ended in 1987, and we played the Detroit Lions. And so the whole team hadn't come back yet, but I had. And so I got to play in the game. The rest of my teammates didn't get to play. But I played in that game, and I had like 11 catches for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I didn't even play in the fourth quarter. So that was statistically the best game I ever played in. But the game that I would be most proud of probably would be a game that I almost caught the fewest amount of passes. I caught 2 passes in this game, and it was the game I just referred to earlier against the Miami Dolphins in the divisional championship game. We played in Miami, and I went 3 quarters of the game and didn't touch a ball, didn't even have a catch. And we were winning the game until the fourth quarter. And the Dolphins went ahead when we threw an interception. The Dolphins ended up taking it back, and they scored a touchdown on the next drive. And so we fell behind for the first time in that game. we got the kickoff then and took the ball, and I caught the first pass of the game in that drive, and I caught a deep square in on the left side. I remember it like it was yesterday, and that put us out to about midfield. It was about a 20, 25-yard catch, and almost the very next play was a route where I was running a post corner route on the right side of the field, and the quarterback threw me the ball. I was able to juke the Dolphin safety, and I ran a corner route, and the quarterback threw a perfect pass, and I took that ball down to the 1-yard line. So now there's about 5 minutes left to go in the game. We're on the 1-yard line, and we score on the very next play that put us ahead. And so that would be the most memorable game. At the end of the story was we ended up kicking off, and the Dolphins fumbled the kickoff, and we recovered and won the game at the end. But that was probably the most memorable just because the 2 catches that I made enabled our team to get down and score the final touchdown that put us into the AFC Championship game.
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Steve, I just wanted to ask you, Roger Gowdy, superintendent of the Madison schools, and young folks today have some challenges that when you were going through school or I was going through school weren't there. With the social media and ESPN, the 10-second snippets, as opposed to the concept of team and a lot of these other things in the work, they see all of this, it's all at their fingertips today, and they have access to so much information. Well, you raised a family, and you know it's a different environment for them, and it's even a more different environment today. What advice do you have for these young people about the concept of team, the preparation, the work involved in becoming a good athlete and a good community, good citizen like you?
You know, that's a great question, and I agree with you. And I'm involved in the technology business, the wireless industry. I mean, how many of you have a cell phone? Yeah, most of you have a cell phone. So that's the industry I'm in. I represent all the companies in the wireless cell phone business. So I represent the handset manufacturers, I represent the carriers, I represent all the people that put all the cool stuff on your phones, from ringtones to whatever. I'm concerned about that because the wireless industry has been, you know, one of the greatest innovators in our culture today, creating so many new devices and new things you can do on your devices, and being able to do all kinds of things in the medical community and the transportation community with different apps that you can download on your phone for free. It's really amazing. But at the same time, that we have the ability to communicate to a person or one to many or whatever, I find that there's less genuine person-to-person communication going on today than ever before. That people feel more isolated today than ever before. And I'm thinking, how in the world can you feel isolated when you can pick up your cell phone and connect with thousands of people at a time? But it doesn't have to do with technology. It doesn't have to do with the ability to connect. It has to do with, you know, who you are as a person and how you feel about, you know, your security or insecurity. And I think that we are seeing a culture of young people today who have more tools than ever before, but are less secure in who they are than ever before. And that's why I say all these things that I'm talking about leadership, about being connected with people who can give you good advice is so important for young people today. Good question, though.
We had another one out here. We'll go. Yes.
This is Nedra Payton, Lorraine High. I wanted to ask us, who are some of the leaders on your team and how do they show leadership?
Who are some of the leaders on my team in football? Guys like Kenny Easley, Dave Brown, Jacob Green, were guys that were real leaders. There's a guy named Sam McCullum, who was another receiver that played for us a long time before you guys were even born, who was a real leader and continues to be a leader in the Seattle community today. Those would be some of the guys that I would say really stood out to me as being men of action, men of their word, men that were real leaders and influential on me.
And as you guys heard, I mean, there's an award the Seahawks have named after him that for exemplifying what we're talking about here today. And I guess as a follow-up to that, what player do you think exemplifies those things today? Or is there someone from the Seahawks or someone just in the NFL that exemplifies determination and perseverance? And
The guy that jumps out right away is Peyton Manning. I think he's a guy that really shows a lot of integrity on the field and off the field. He's a guy that works hard, who studies his opponents, and he's very aware of what's going on, and he's also very competitive. But he would be a guy that I would think of right away.
And we have a question here from Berea, and I think it's kind of an interesting question because I think you can go a lot of different directions with this. But if you were starting today in the NFL with a team, what would you say to the new players coming onto your team?
That's a great question. I've not ever thought about that before. I think I would say basically the same thing I'm saying to these people here today, these young people today. I would talk about integrity. I would talk about having a willingness to work, to be the best that you are, being able to have the discipline to be a great player. I think everybody has those types of character qualities available to them, and they can use them. So I wouldn't talk about how fast you run, how big you are, how strong you are, because not everybody has all those tools. But everybody can work hard. Everybody can study your opponent. Everybody can be prepared, and I think that's true in life as well.
We have time for about 2 more questions. So I saw a couple more hands up. Lady up front here has a. We get her. Oh, I'm sorry. If there's someone with a mic back there, then we can get to the lady up front here.
Oh, you want to know what?
What kind of car you drive?
Oh, I have an F-150.
The Ford guy. Gentleman in the back there.
Oh, Chris Miller from Lorraine High. I wanted to know who are some of your role models and why?
That's a great question, too. As a receiver, I had some role models. Fred Biletnikoff was a great receiver for the Oakland Raiders, and I followed what he did. Lynn Swann was also a great guy for the Steelers, a great receiver, and just a good person, had a lot of character. Those would be guys that would come to mind right away, that I tried to follow their example, and try to be the type of player that they were.
And what do you feel about young people out here today that kind of look at these NFL stars as role models? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's really true. There's been I can't remember who it was. It was like Charles Barkley, when he was asked, "Are you a role model?" And he said, "No, I'm not a role model." And I couldn't disagree anymore. The fact is that professional athletes or people in movie stars, they are role models no matter what they do. Now, what kind of role model is a different question, because there's a lot of role models out there that are setting bad examples for young people, and you don't, you don't want to follow bad role models. You want to follow good role models. So that's the only question. The question is not whether you're a role model or not. The question is, are you going to be a good role model, or are you going to be a negative role model? And I think that's the question that anybody that becomes famous has to ask themselves. What kind of role model are you going to be? Because the question is not, are you going to be a role model or not? The question is going to be, what kind of role model will you be?
And the one thing to realize, obviously the media perpetuates some of these bad stories, but for every, football star that you hear about got in trouble, or any, public person, there's 99 others behind the scenes doing a lot of community work with their foundations and doing a lot of things for their communities across the country. So it's unfortunate that sometimes those bad things get pushed through the media too often. It's just the way of the industry. But there's a lot of folks that are behind the scenes, like Mr. Largent here, that are doing a lot for their communities across the country. Let's go one last question. Who's got the ultimate question at the end here that wants to close the program with a question? I'll let the volunteers decide there.
I'm Billy from Madison. I was just wondering, how
how much did the weight room play into a big part when you were working out, going up to for football games? How much did that help you prepare for it?
Well, I think that everything you do in the weight room is helpful, but I would tell you I kind of came up in a time in football that the weight room wasn't emphasized like it is today. I came up when it was a good thing to play multiple sports in high school. So I played baseball, I played football. Today, it's getting anymore where you have to just focus on one sport. And I don't know that I think that's a good thing. I think it's better to be able to do a lot of different things. But as teams in high school, college, and so on have gotten more into just focusing on one sport, the emphasis in the weight room has become much greater. And I think that it's a foregone conclusion that if you're going to play football today, you're going to play competitive football today at any level, but certainly in high school and college, you've got to be in the weight room. You cannot possibly be successful in today's world without being in the weight room. So it's very, very important.
And as you guys watch the NFL Combine and you see them analyze their 40 time and their how high they jump and their ankle flexion and all these things, you know what else they test for? It's a Wonderlic test that they do on these athletes. And you know what else is they're looking at these college athletes? You know what else they're interviewing? They're interviewing their coaches, their professors, and finding out about these individuals' character. So it's just as a heavy determinant as how many times you can rep out 225. I bet you can probably do it about 20 times, right? Yeah. So that's an important thing to note, that character and the ability to prepare are weighed just as heavily as 40 times in the National Football League. Is there anything, closing remarks that you'd like to share with this group in regards to character?
I don't think so. We've covered it.
Okay. Well, one last question? Gentleman up front here. Here we go.
High School. You said you majored in biology and football and everything worked out great, but I just wonder what you might have done had the NFL not come to be.
That's a great question. The question was, what would have happened if football had not been in my future out of college? I got my degree in biology, and my intentions were, had I not made it in football. And the truth is, as I told this story last time, was that I was actually waived by the Houston Oilers. In other words, cut. I was released by the Oilers. And then the Seahawks called me a day later. So there was a period of time when I was thinking I was going to have to put my college degree to work. But I did have my college degree, and that was vitally important to me, to get my degree in 4 years' time and then be prepared if football didn't work out. And I was prepared. And I got my degree in biology, and my intention was, because oil and gas industry is real big in Oklahoma, was to do a combination between oil and gas and biology. And I was really thinking about doing something marine biology. Offshore drilling was big in the 70s, and I thought there was to be a good combination between the oil and gas industry that I grew up in and marine biology. So that was my intention. I look now and say, I'm glad it didn't happen, but I was prepared if it did.
Mr. Largent, on behalf of the Hall of Fame and our president and executive director here, I want to just say thank you for taking time out of your day and flying to Canton to do this. And we want to thank all the students and teachers, not only live here, but through video conferencing. I want to say thank you. If you haven't toured the museum, go ahead and do so now. And this concludes our program. Thank you very much.